Hello and welcome to the Lifestyle Dentist Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Garth Hatch, and super excited for this episode. We have with us Dr. Michael Moawad. He is a dentist, currently doing a GPR right now, and interested in specializing, applying for endodontic programs right now. And so kind of at the transition road that a lot of dental students are either coming to or are currently in, and can relate to a lot that Michael's going through. And so thought it would be really helpful both for future dental students, current dental students, and even for a lot of dentists that are in practice, even on the later part of their career, the older half, I should say, of dentists that may be looking for either an associate or to sell their practice. It's important to understand the dynamics right now that a lot of residents are facing, and that a lot of dental students are facing, to help overall, to help them and help the specialty and the profession of dentistry in general. So with all that said, Michael, so glad to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Hatcher. I appreciate being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah. We connected at the American Association of Endodontists meeting, the AE there in LA, right next to Kobe Bryant's statue and the whatever that was, a Staples Center, the whatever or no, now it's a different.
Yeah, I think it's called the Crypto.com Arena now.
Yeah, now it's Crypto, Center, where the Lakers play in the convention hall. But yeah, it was great meeting Michael. We both have a very cool mutual friend and connection with Michael Feldman, another Michael out there from New York. Anybody that knows Dr. Feldman, he's just an amazing human being, great clinician, great endodontist, but just an amazing human being. One of my dear friends and one of the coolest guys on the planet that when I think of just an amazing person is Michael Feldman. So yeah. What was your relationship with Michael Feldman, I should say?
Yeah, I mean, he's currently my endodontic, attending in the program. And, we get to see him a good amount, and he does lectures for us. And he just makes endo, seem fun and exciting. And he, he's able to make things applicable for us and, really relate to the feelings that, some students or some young dentists might get doing their first few endos, like the butterflies you might get, and that like gut-wrenching feeling when you work into something that you weren't really, expecting.
Right.
So, he kind of put that all out there for us and made it so that like it's okay to feel that as long as you can go through your process and at the end of the day just do the things that you know how to do.
Yeah. It's so true. I'm an endodontist as well, like Dr. Feldman, and I did not know I was going to be an endodontist. First of all, I didn't even know I was planning on doing dental school. I was going to be a fireman like my dad, and then decided, oh, maybe I'll do physical therapy because the college I was going to didn't have a fire science major, and so that was my plan. And ended up almost my senior year, heard about dentistry and how it's a great way to make good money and have decent hours. So I switched my major and applied to dental school, and luckily got in. But I didn't even know what an endodontist was till I started dental school, let alone want to become one. So yeah, so it was a good professor I was going to Indiana University, and had a professor named Joseph Legan, this really cool endodontist, that prior Air Force endodontist and great professor that just made endo seem fun and interesting and very synchronous the way he explained things, and made a lot of sense, and just thought it might be a fun profession. So that's nice to have a good mentor like that.
For sure.
Yeah. How many residents are there in your GPR right now?
Yeah, so currently we have 10 first-year residents and 2 second years or chiefs. So it's a pretty large program, but it's really cool because you get to see a lot of, fresh dentists and kind of compare the education that you might have had, or, how you learned how to do something clinically versus how they learned. And you get to compare those processes and, you learn a lot of cool things along the way. So it's been fun.
Yeah.
Can't complain.
That's awesome. Well, hey, let's take a couple steps back here. For young Michael, when did you decide to become a dentist? Was this like a lifelong dream? Was this something that came up with time? Tell me about that.
I wish it was a lifelong dream, but for me, my father's an engineer, all my uncles are engineers, so it was something that I grew up kind of into, and I really had an interest for it, so I started that direction in undergrad. About 3 years in, I decided, this isn't for me,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
so I kind of did the shuffle that
mhm,
a lot of people tend to end up doing.
mhm,
Went to pre-med,
mhm.
then had a distant family member who was a periodontist, and
Very cool.
she recommended that I, just get a job as a dental assistant or something, just to,
Mhm,
see if I can, get something from being exposed to the field, and see
mhm,
if that's something I'm interested in. And
mhm.
so that's what I did,
That's
and got involved, became an assistant, and ended up loving it. And
that's cool.
here I am now.
That's awesome. Good for you. How long were you a dental assistant?
2 years.
Good for you. I think that's one of the best things anybody even interested in dentistry, whether it's to be
Yeah.
a dentist, a hygienist, anything. There is nothing better than working in a dental clinic and
Oh yeah.
really seeing what real dentistry is like. Is it something that you want to do? Even if you know it's something you want to do, it's still so helpful to go through everything. I remember in dental school, there's a couple uh, students that either were a dental assistant or for their dad or whatever at their office, or they were a hygienist that decided to go to dental school, and they had such a leg up on the other people that didn't, because they
Hmm.
knew dentistry. They understood okay, what does a root canal really look like, what does an extraction really look like, or if they're doing different procedures, and clinical, their hand skills when they're doing the wax ups and dentures and
Hmm.
all that. They were just amazing, compared to people that didn't. So yeah, that's such a great leg up and smart idea to do.
Yeah, I mean, it really helped me, like you said, just being able to like breeze through the first and second year labs of like
Mhm,
taking impressions, taking radiographs, and being able to now put my focus on, academics, or, learning about other things that you don't really cover as much as an assistant.
mhm,
Whereas, other students who are completely fresh to the field, they gotta put that focus on, those things which I already had a experience doing. So
mhm. And
definitely
so
helped
was it
out.
you were going to Stony Brook? Were you doing that while you're going through Stony Brook, or what was that like?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was my senior year of Stony Brook. I was catching up on all the prerequisites for dental, and then working as an assistant. And then I ended up taking a year off between
Mm-hmm.
undergrad
Yeah.
and dental school, and
Mm-hmm.
I worked full time as an assistant during that
Mm-hmm.
year. So
Yeah, that's
it
awesome.
it was
That's
awesome. Yeah.
I think that's awesome in a lot of ways. Yeah, you got all that experience being a dental assistant, really learning about dentistry, having your mind to get a break from
A
school,
break. Yep,
just a little mental downtime to get prepared to grind for 4 years. So
for
yeah,
sure.
that's awesome. And so you did that. I'm assuming put out a bunch of applications while you're in that transition year while you're working in tell me about that. How was that applying to schools? What year was that, by the way, too? What year were you doing all that and applying to your
That
dental program?
was that was 2018. 2018.
2018. Okay, so
Hmm.
pre-COVID. Okay, that's probably good news.
Yeah.
And
But yeah, I mean, it was a cool process. I
mm,
I had a lot of friends, like close family friends at
mm,
the time, who had either just gotten into dental school or had recently graduated. And so, one thing I could say, it's so important to just have like guidance,
mhm,
to have,
mhm,
and they don't have to be like these mentors that have been in the field for 50 years. Like
yeah,
just having someone who just went through it to motivate you, to push you, to
mhm,
to even tell you like, hey, like it's okay to feel that way, or
yeah,
it's okay to be nervous, it's okay to be
mhm,
scared. There's a
mhm,
lot of doubts,
yeah,
but I don't know. For me, it was cool. I had a lot of support from the doctors that I was assisting at the time too.
mhm,
They were young dentists, about 5 years out of dental school,
mhm,
and so they knew the process well, and they
mhm,
were always there to help. So
yeah,
for me, I thought it was a year of growth, a
mhm,
year of learning, and I tend to have the mentality of what's going to happen happens, and
mhm,
try not to get down in the dumps if it doesn't go your way, and
Hmm.
you'll figure it out. So,
Hmm.
I mean, thank God it worked out, but
Yeah. But you're right. You're right. It's a competitive field. Knock on wood, I had decent grades, but I don't know if I would have gotten in or not when I applied. With the standards today, it's a competitive field, even more than medical school. A lot of times to get into dental
oh
school,
yeah.
a lot of people want to. They see the light, they see the benefits of being a dentist, and
For
both money
sure.
wise and lifestyle wise. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's a good point too, as far as looking for mentors and help with whatever career you're doing, whatever skill or you're learning. That yeah, it is nice to learn from somebody that's 30 years ahead of you or world class or whatever they do, but really you're going to learn the most typically by somebody who's walking aside you that may just be 2, 3, or 5 years ahead, that's
Yeah.
been there, can go, yeah, this was where the road gets bumpy, but this is where it evens out. And they can relate to you because they're not 30 years ahead, and they have no clue what it's like now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, that's something that for me, I always try to seek out those people. Even choosing dental schools,
Mm-hmm.
I would ask dental students more than I would current dentists, because I felt like they're going through it. They could tell you the
Mm-hmm.
most about the program, and they'll be brutally honest. So,
Mm-hmm.
they'll give you the best insight.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great point, and that's a good segue too. Kind of on that transition when you were applying for school, you obviously decide on NYU. How was that process? Do you just knew I was going to NYU? You was close to Stony Brook, or did you apply to multiple schools, or what was that process like?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I applied definitely multiple schools. I had a few options. For me, I did want to stay close to home. My family lives on Long Island currently, and I loved the clinical experience that
Mm-hmm.
I think that you would get at NYU. And for me, that was the biggest thing. Like, I
Hmm.
like to get my hands dirty. I like to jump
Hmm.
in. I trust the education that I have, and
Hmm.
the guidance that I've had, and
Hmm.
I like to just put it into practice. And
Hmm.
so for me, that was the biggest decision and the biggest factor that led to that decision.
That's good to hear. I'm curious, with NYU, do they get plenty of patients? Is that usually something that they get plenty of, or lots of
Yeah,
patients?
yeah,
Awesome.
for sure. I mean, every day that there's lines outside the building going down the block, maybe,
Hmm.
2 or 3 blocks, and constant emergency patients walking in. We're
Hmm.
seeing about, as a dental student, we were seeing about 5 to 6 patients a day,
That's
which
awesome.
was a great experience.
Oh, that's huge. That's huge. What a
Hmm.
blessing. I was blessed similar. Indiana, was the only dental school in the state of Indiana. So they had plenty of patients. We got to do lots of extractions and endo and operative and everything else. I think for any dental student, that's probably one of the biggest things I would say is look at
Hmm.
costs, but especially look at what's the patient flow like,
Yeah.
because unless you're going to be a professor that's going to do a lot of research, you really want to get a lot of clinical skills. And you feel for some of these people graduating from their dental school, and they did like whatever 3 root canals or a handful of extractions. It's like you are not ready.
Hmm.
You're barely not even dangerous, or you probably are dangerous at that point because you don't know
Yeah.
what you don't know.
Yep.
You haven't had your lumps, so yeah, that's scary. So that's awesome. That's good to hear then with NYU, because that's a plus to get lots of patients. So
Oh,
that
for
is
sure.
cool. And so, what was the curriculum like? Was it similar to a lot of schools, like you're grinding for 2 years and then it's a little more clinical the third and fourth, or is it like all 4 years grind, or what was it like for you for dental school wise as far as at NYU?
First 2 years were definitely heavy academically.
Mm-hmm.
Second year is when we started to get into like a lot more labs as well. You know, fixed labs, removable labs.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing a little more advanced operative labs.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot more lab time, but still a heavy curriculum in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like the academics.
Mm-hmm.
Third year, we started off in clinic, but our didactic schedule was actually pretty heavy as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say for
Mm-hmm.
me, that was the most challenging year in terms
Mm-hmm.
of responsibilities
Mm-hmm.
and time management, just because the first 2 years you know what to expect. it's
Mm-hmm.
didactics mainly.
Mm-hmm.
We all know how to study. That's how we've
Mm-hmm.
gotten there. But in that third year, it's like, oh, now I got to balance patient care,
Mm-hmm.
almost a full-time job basically, and then
Mm-hmm.
go home and do that same amount of studying. Definitely challenge, but once you get into that routine, it just works out. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's good. On that note, married, single, what kids, what's your time like when you go home?
currently single. I moved back home, live with my family currently
Mhm.
just for residency,
Nice. Yeah.
for this 1 year, just to
Save
save a
on
little
rent.
money.
Yeah,
Yep,
that's awesome.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then after residency, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's cool. That is nice though, that because it is a grind, man. It's I remember in dental school, like studying felt like every waking hour and still didn't feel like I got it all in, so that's
Yep.
hard, especially if you've got a family that you want to try and balance that with. So yeah, no, that can be a blessing, especially in that first couple of years during that grind. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then you're doing a GPR. Tell me about that. I guess first how the GPR is, and maybe a step back too. What made you decide to do a GPR when you were graduating?
Yeah, I think for me, a couple factors. One being short term, I wanted to stay in New York.
Hmm.
And then New York is one of those states that does require you to get their license. You have to do a 1 year GPR, or you can work out of state for a number
Hmm.
of years. And I
Hmm.
think the license transfers. But so that was something that went into it. Also, I didn't want to just give up on an opportunity to learn more. I knew that I could just do a 1 year GPR and then go out into practice. And I would
Hmm.
just, even if I didn't like the GPR, I just lost 1 year. But
Hmm.
let's
Hmm.
say I went straight into practice and realized, hey, maybe I'm not ready, or
Hmm.
maybe, I wish I had that extra educational time.
Hmm.
It's hard to go back
Yeah.
into a GPR after that.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
I saw the opportunity there and I said, why not? I feel like I'm someone who I go into a place and I try to make the most of the situation wherever I'm at.
Hmm.
And I knew if I did that, I'd come out with something useful. So,
Yeah, that's smart. I can relate to that. I went into the Army after dental school. I was on an Army
wow.
scholarship and grateful for that. Saved me a ton of debt. And so I did a 1 year AGD in the Army after I
Hmm.
graduated. And bar none, that was probably the best overall year of learning in dentistry that I've ever had, because it wasn't, and we did some book work and some lit, but most of it was hands-on clinical, doing a bunch of cases. When we were doing endo, it was with the endodontist. When we were doing perio, it was with the periodontist. When we were doing oral surgery, we're in there with the oral surgeon. We're holding retractors when they're doing Lafort ones and
Wow.
bisagittal split osteotomies and just crazy stuff that there's no way I would have had an opportunity to do something like that in the
Hmm.
OR without doing a residency like that. And so it really was a great year to just learn the overall picture of dentistry. And I'm sure GPR is similar to that, where you get to really get your hands wet and learn as a clinician.
For sure. For sure. I mean, and we have a number of faculty too who have different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
All of our attendings have come from different educational institutions, and
Mm-hmm.
there's just so much to learn and different ways to learn it. And I think that's the coolest thing. And, we're blessed where all of our attendings really stress like, hey, there is no one right way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
You do what feels right in your hand. And so it's been a great opportunity to learn. It's been, like you said, kind of a big picture of dentistry. We
Mm-hmm.
see it all. You see some things that you probably won't see again if you ever
Right.
go into private practice.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's cool to know because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
never know what could walk through that door.
100%. Yeah, when you're hospital based and you've got a good mentor kind of has your back just in case things go south. Yeah, no, that is
Hmm.
nice to. It definitely, at least with me, it made me a lot more brave to try things I probably would not try on my own. So yeah,
For
that's
sure.
huge. That's huge. Hey, just curious too, as far as with your graduating class, when you think about your friends that you graduated with, what percentage would you say either did a GPR or went into a residency versus moved out of state and started private practice? And of those that did get out, what percentage do you think either like bought a practice or associated for a corporate type office or associate for a private practice? Like any ideas on, and it doesn't have to be exact, but just kind of ballpark, from your graduating class, what was kind of the layout of some of your friends?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, NYU, we had a big graduating class, about 400. So,
Wow, that's a huge
yeah,
class. That's
yeah.
amazing.
Uh, so I mean, we had a number of different directions with
Mhm.
everyone. To my surprise, I'd say like maybe 65% went out and, to a GPR program or a
Mhm.
specialty of some sort of residency. But, a high percentage went out of state to work. And I
Mhm.
think that might have to do with the prices
Mhm.
of, those loans and our
Mhm.
education, and especially NYU being one of the more costly
Mhm.
institutions. So
Mhm.
I think that was a big factor. And from what I know and what I can remember, a lot of people had their first opportunities out of state with
Mhm.
either DSOs or, private practices, but
Mhm.
mainly DSOs from what
Mhm.
I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's where I know dentistry DSO is kind of it's a controversial word. I guess some
Hmm.
people look at them like the devil, others love them, others are kind of in between. I look at it as it's another model that is going to exist whether people love it or hate it. It's and part of it is like you said, if people are coming out with crazy student debt, they don't have the money to buy, Dr. Jones's office is getting ready to retire,
No, yeah.
and they may not. Dr. Jones may not even be providing an opportunity for them, so they've got to go somewhere. And so these DSOs are providing jobs for people, especially when they're getting out of school. And so they're filling a need just like any other office would. What with your class? I mean, you could say yours or just in general. I'm curious. Average, of your classmates. What's an average debt load of people graduating from dental school right now that you're aware of?
Yeah, I mean, just at NYU, I'd say average, especially because a lot of people had to, include cost of living and all that,
Hmm.
close to, it's about 450,
Hmm.
500,000.
And that's just for
If you
dental school.
were
That's not counting undergrad.
correct, yeah. And then,
Wow.
I mean, if you were lucky enough to go to a state school, maybe a little
Hmm.
bit lower tuition, that
Hmm.
number might be around 300,
Hmm.
350. Still a
Hmm.
steep number, but maybe a little bit more manageable.
Hmm. But you're right though. That's a big. I mean, if you're looking at almost a $500,000 in debt, that's a big monkey on your back when you're graduating. That has to
Oh,
be
yeah.
accounted for. You can make it up. I mean, luckily, dentistry is a very profitable business once people are up and going and it's done right. But still, that's a big house payment that you're paying with nothing to show for it, but what's in your brain right there, in your
Exactly.
uh, in the cranium. So yeah, that's pretty wild, and it does explain a lot of decisions that people make when they're coming out of school. Because at the end of the day, yeah, you have
Yeah.
to pay the bills.
Yeah. I mean, just like you said, I think a lot of my classmates based most of their decisions post graduation
Mm-hmm.
just on the money.
Mm-hmm.
And not in a selfish way,
Mm-hmm.
not in a way where they're not thinking about the patient care, but you also have to think about, okay, if I have this giant loan on me, how
Mm-hmm.
can I start a family? Am I going to
Yes.
be able to buy a house?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to be able to, afford all these other things? If I need to get a loan to open a private practice or,
Mm-hmm.
open my own office, am I
Mm-hmm.
able to do that with my
Mm-hmm.
existing debt? So yeah, I think it's justified to
Mm-hmm.
take that into account and take it seriously.
Mm-hmm. Any recommendations for dental students or future dental students that are going to be going to school and acquiring a lot of debt? How any ideas to minimize that debt load?
I think first of all, it's understanding the debt repayment process
Mm-hmm.
before you request the loans.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, and this is myself included, got
Uh-huh.
federal loans.
Mm-hmm.
So, they do have repayment plans, they have forgiveness programs, but there are conditions tied to each, program and payment
Mm-hmm.
plan. So it's kind of understanding that and understanding the guidelines and the expectations of each plan. And is that something that, I see myself doing? Or am I someone who, wants to make minimum payments for a longer period of time and just, tack it on to the list of other payments I'm making. But at
Mm-hmm.
that point, like I can still kind of live my life,
Mm-hmm.
jump on opportunities versus, some people do the 10-year, there's a 10-year forgiveness plan where I believe
Mm-hmm.
if you work at an FQHC for 10 years, all your loans get forgiven.
Wow.
But again, that's something to consider because normally the FQHCs pay a little bit less.
Mm-hmm.
So it's now you have less money coming in, but in 10 years, you won't have that debt on you. So for me, it's just being knowledgeable of what options you have out there, what kind of payment plans there are before just jumping in and then scrambling afterwards.
Yeah, nobody rides for free.
Nope, not
Nobody
here.
rides for free. Yeah, I saw that just with some of my friends and classmates that, you feel like, oh, I can get all this free money,
Yep.
these loans, buying SUVs, taking vacations,
Yeah.
these exotic vacations, buying fancy watches. It's like, I'm going to be a dentist. I'm going to be making all this money. And it's like, it's so dumb when
Oh
you're
yeah.
living above your means. I mean, you really should be driving a beat up, used Ford Focus that just
Mm-hmm.
gets to class and back. And as long as something's reliable to save money as much as you can until you get out. And granted, I mean, debt's going to be a part of the process for most people, but if you borrow 50 grand to buy or if she's 80 grand now to buy a brand new SUV, you're going to be paying a whole lot more than 80 grand over time with interest as a student
Yeah.
loan. So yeah, just being aware of that. So you're applying to Endo right now. I saw you at the A meeting there in LA. What made you decide on Endo?
It's funny. In dental school, I'd say it's the most feared procedure for most students, me included. And I don't know, when I got to residency, having Dr. Feldman, having my other endo attending, Dr. Ammons, they kind of simplified it. They took all the distractions away from it and just,
Mm-hmm.
were really able to break it down for me.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, you just get way more exposure to it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, within the first couple of months, I had tripled what I had done in dental school just
Mm-hmm.
in a matter of a couple of months. Yeah, so I was really able to get that good experience, and from there, once it started to click, I was like, oh wow, this is fun.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the aspect of, I think a lot of things of dentistry are technical and very reliant on hand skills.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like about endo is it's kind of the other way around. It's less reliant on that in some aspects and more about create a diagnosis and read a radiograph and be able to expect, what you can't see physically. So for me, that was the coolest part. And I
Mm-hmm.
just see it as a nice challenge every time I, access a tooth. And yeah, from there, I decided to apply.
That's awesome. Good for you. And I think
Thanks.
that's gold for really anybody that wants to get good at something in dentistry or in life for that matter. Find something that you enjoy and break it down. Find good mentors to really simplify it. What are the steps to make it work? And then do a lot of it and get it to where it's predictable. Because I think
Yeah.
the enemy for most dentists, especially as a general dentist, and I was a general dentist for 2 years, there's so many things you could do. You can do everything. You can do endo, you can do oral surgery, you can do implants, you can do dentures, you can do orthodontics, you can do big old FBDs, you doing bridges and crowns and Invisalign and everything else. But you can do anything, but you can't do everything. At
Yeah.
least you can't do it well.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is those that try to do everything are never going to be great at anything. You're going to
Hmm.
be a mile wide and an inch deep. And so find what you enjoy, what you can do predictably. And it could be various things. It doesn't have to be one thing. I know some awesome general dentists that are amazing clinicians and they are good at several different things, but I know they definitely know their lane. They're like, I can do this predictably. I can do, they may have a handful of procedures and they do them over and over and over and they do them fast and they're very profitable, but they know this is going to be a headache. I'm going to send it out to a specialist. I'm going to send it to another colleague, whatever it is, or even in a private practice, they could have one guy that does a little more ortho, one guy that does a little more perio, whatever it is. But find what lane you can do well in and just do a lot of it. But
Yeah.
don't be a mile wide and an inch deep, or otherwise you're going to be going crazy, and you really won't be profitable. I think that's a really good lesson. So yeah, no, something else you did too that I was very impressed. You went to the AE meeting. I mean, you're interested in endo, and so you went to the annual session where they're going to have obviously a bunch of endodontists, a bunch of program directors, a bunch of endodontic residents, and there is something to really emphasize being in the room where it happened. You know, if you can be in the room with the decision makers, whatever that is, whether you're looking to buy a business, you're looking to get into a residency, you're looking at getting a loan for a business venture, whatever it is, you want to be in the room with the decision makers, because most of life is not what you know, it's who you know, and not even who you know, it's do they know you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so when they know you, that's a big difference. So that was really smart. How was that, by the way? How did you enjoy attending the AE conference?
I mean, it was a awesome experience. I'm not gonna lie, going into it, it was my first major conference.
Hmm.
There's a little nerves, but just everyone is so social and,
Hmm.
willing to share,
Hmm.
their story and how they
Hmm.
got there and share their experiences
Hmm.
and share their time.
Hmm.
And that's part of, how I ran into you. It was
Yeah.
just a casual run in and we got to
Hmm.
talking and
Hmm.
from there now we're both on here.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and so, I was able to make a lot of cool relationships,
Hmm.
open some doors. And on top of that, just all the CE courses. Um,
Hmm.
I was able to bring back a lot of knowledge to my GPR,
Yeah.
in terms of how I go about things, um, different literature that, I saw in the CE courses.
Hmm.
Um, and then even just, bouncing it off of my attendings and being like, hey, I
Hmm.
heard this, or, I saw this paper on that. And,
Hmm.
what are your thoughts? And, my attendings are really cool where they'll sit down and have that conversation. And, you kind of have that opportunity to kind of go back and forth. And I think for me that has made me a better clinician just
Hmm.
from being able to be there.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah. So
Good for
I
you.
loved it. Yeah.
Good for you. Well, hey, any endodontic directors that are listening to this, make sure to give Michael a chance, or at least a second look, because I'm sure you're gonna have many opportunities. But yeah, hopefully all you need is one. So yeah, hopefully get
Yep.
into a good program, and any way I can help you too, my friend, please let me know, because you would be a great asset to any residency, just knowing you and our interaction at the AE, and now I know what a great person you are, a great clinician, your big heart. I know you're very patient centric, and you're going to do a lot of great dentistry and a lot of good wherever you end up. So yeah, yeah,
I
hope
appreciate
that
you, Dr.
all works.
Hatch.
Anytime, absolutely. I hope that works out well, in any way I can help. Please let me know. On that note, how is that process going? What does that look like? Is it similar to dental school? For better or worse, I applied to one residency because I was in the Army. It was the Army residency,
Yeah.
and luckily I got in my after applying. Applied the first year, didn't get it. Applied the second year, got it. So, but with applying to multiple residencies, what does that process look like?
Yeah. I mean, obviously similar to applying for dental schools. Um, you got to get your rec letters in, you got to write your personal statement, try and make yourself stand out in any way possible.
Mhm.
Um, And then, I just sent out apps and you send them to, I sent it to, you know, the schools that I wanted to apply to that are linked with a DIA Pass, which is
Mhm.
the like general application. And then
Mhm.
a lot of the schools respond with supplemental applications. You might have to write something small for them. They might have a few questions. And then that's basically where I'm at now.
Mhm.
And I heard the application process for endo is pretty quick. because it's
Mhm.
rolling admissions. So,
Mhm.
um, I'm excited for it, and but I'm also understanding of the process,
Mhm.
and understanding of, like I said, so many people at AAE didn't get
Mhm.
in their first time,
Mhm.
or you know, I met someone who got in on their 10th time applying,
Mhm.
and it's inspiring to see. So, um,
Mhm.
I spoke with the program director. He told me just because you don't get in doesn't mean you should be discouraged, because
Mhm.
almost all the applicants are, you know, justify having a spot in most of these programs. So
Mhm.
sometimes it's just luck of the draw on who they see first.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, like I said, I'm exciting. If I get in, it'd be a blessing, and if I don't, you be sure I'll be applying again. So that's
Absolutely.
what I want to do.
Smart man, and really, if it's something you want to do, make it happen. And whether it's this fall, next fall, it'll happen. If you keep
Yeah,
chugging along, it's going to happen. I've got several friends that it took them a couple years, and you can still work. You can still do plenty of dentistry,
exactly.
do plenty of endo. And I
Hmm.
would, I would just, if it doesn't work out, find somewhere where you can crank out a lot of dentistry, including endo, make some cash, and then apply, because every year of experience is going to make you look that much better too,
Yeah.
and if it's meant to be this year, because if you apply, I'm just curious myself, if you apply now, would it be for this fall or would it be for the following fall?
The fall of 2025.
Fall 25. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, no, that sounds like there's a very good opportunity for that to work out. That's awesome. And so with the GPR, is it end this year or is it end next year? How does the GPR work? Is it a 1 or 2 year GPR?
Yeah, it's a 1 year GPR. Within my program has an optional second year. You can apply
Mhm.
to come back as chief resident,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, which is something I decided to take on.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so after talking with my program director,
Yeah.
Dr. Feldman, Dr. Ammons, my other endo attending, you know, we thought for the path that I want to take of
Mhm.
eventually,
Mhm.
becoming an
Yeah.
endodontist, uh, remaining in an educational environment would be probably the best for me.
Mhm.
Um, just being able to learn so much and, gain a lot of experience. And
Mhm.
so that's something I'm really excited about. But yeah, normally it's from July to June 30th, and it's just
Very
that one
cool.
year. And a lot of my co-residents are out looking for jobs currently.
Mhm.
So it's an exciting time for everyone.
That's cool. You probably already have, but on that note, I would definitely ask Dr. Feldman for a letter of recommendation when you apply. You know, he he's very well known, and he he's a big figure in endodontics, literally and figuratively. He's a big guy, but also just very well known, just because the person he is. So yeah, a lot of people know Dr. Feldman.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you said, very, very tall man.
Yes,
Um, but he's got a big heart, that comes
huge
along with
huge
that.
heart,
So,
huge heart. And he's
yeah,
got a
just,
perfect head like me too. He's got my same haircut, so
yep, yep.
awesome. Man, this has been amazing, Michael. Final thoughts, with Lifestyle Dentist Podcast, we're big on lifestyle, where we want dentists to have good income, a successful practice, good profitability, but also have a life that you enjoy, where you have your health, your family and relationships are solid. Your mental and spirituality is in balance, that you are living a whole life, a fully fulfilled life. And I know, at least for me, when I was a dental student, especially, and even a residency, it was not necessarily perfect balance. Usually it was fairly imbalanced. But how do you stay balanced in a busy, stressful situation like a residency you're in right now?
Yeah, yeah, that's an awesome question. It's funny you say that, because I always tell people I love dentistry. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'll be the first one to tell you, but at the end of the day, you know, it is still a priority, but it has to come second to your family and
Mm-hmm.
second to your well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for me, I am pretty active. I, go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. I play sports, whether it's basketball, soccer, um, and I hang out with my family and my friends whenever I can.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, once my responsibilities are done and taken care of,
Mm-hmm.
but
Sure.
it, you have to keep yourself, your mind right. You have to surround yourself with like-minded people. Um, if you drown in the work, then you start to lose the love and for the field. And
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, uh, even during this year, especially in the winter months, I mean, you saw a lot of my co-residents who started to get checked out a little bit. Um, and it took us, hanging out or kind of just distracting ourselves or giving yourself something to look forward to, whether it's next week or tonight or whatever it is, to
Mm-hmm.
to be able to find the joy at work again and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I think it's like you preach, something super important to be able to have a life outside of dentistry. Um, and it's a great field and it's
Mm-hmm.
awesome and it's, so much fun to talk about, but
Mm-hmm.
you got to be able to disconnect a little bit, and I think that's super important.
100%, 100%. Yeah, it is. It's that balancing, you if you
Yeah,
don't have your health, if you don't have good relationships, you could have all the money in the world and still be miserable. You
yeah,
you want to do those things that are going to keep you balanced. I've had two friends, sadly, that I've lost. One this year to suicide,
I'm so sorry.
and it's heartbreaking. I mean, this was a big motivator when I decided to do the the podcast and the coaching consulting to help with the dentist to have a great life and a lifestyle, and part of that is you need to stay focused on what's most important. At the end of the day, there's so many things that matter, and finding joys in the simple things of life, even, just it, you could be wealthy or you could be poor and still have great joy, still laugh, still have fun. I was a service missionary for my church in Brazil, in northern Brazil in the Amazons. And one of the biggest lessons I learned there was most of the people there were poor. Like 90% of the country, the state where I was at was very poor. And even the 10% that were fairly rich would be like poor middle class, in the
Hmm.
US. But for there, they were very rich, and yet most of them were very happy. I mean, they had
Yeah,
hardly anything. They would laugh. They could play soccer as long as they had enough food. They could, watch some TV and hang out with their family and play the guitar and sing and laugh. They were happy. They had joy, and so it really doesn't take a lot to find joy. I think we need to get focused on what really matters in life and just the simple pleasures, and not to diminish doing well. I mean, you can accomplish anything. I mean, in this country, at least, knock on wood, at least how it is right now. Hopefully, it doesn't change. But there's no limit if you're willing to work, if you're willing to grow, to take risk. You can accomplish anything, uh, and you should do well. You can bless the lives of yourself and those around you, but make sure you do it where you have that balance, where you have the health, you have the relationships, you have your mental and your spiritual soul taken care of, where you feel good about yourself, and you're doing good to those around you too. I think that makes a big difference to really have a great lifestyle.
yeah, for sure. I mean, just to speak on quickly what you said, I right before residency started and about 1 week after I graduated dental school, I went to Egypt on a dental, you know, service trip.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so we were there for a week and we were doing emergent care, mainly extractions, in like a small village in the desert. And
Mm-hmm.
these had to be the most joyous people I've ever seen in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And you have kids who have bombed out teeth, and adults who have abscesses, and they're walking around with no shoes on, and there's not a car in sight. Everyone's riding donkeys or horses, and like that's just how poor the area is and how disconnected it is from the urban lifestyle that exists. And for me, that was inspiring. Just coming out of school, being able to see that, um, and I told myself it's something that no matter where I end up, whether I'm an endodontist or just a general dentist, something I want to continue to do. So, um, sorry, I didn't want to take too long, but
Not
I
at
thought
all.
when you brought that up, that was something cool for me too as well.
That was beautiful. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Do not be sorry at all. That added a lot. And that it really does. It puts things in perspective,
Yeah.
of what really matters. Michael, I can guarantee you're going to do well in your career in life, whether it's as an endodontist, a general dentist, or anything else that you choose to do, just because of your heart, your intelligence, your skill level. If you're to look at 10 years down the road, Michael Moawad, Dr. Moawad is 10 years down the road. Your life is the way you want it. What would that look like if you were to get that vision 10 years ahead? You may not have everything mapped out, but what are some things that you would love to have in your life 10 years from now?
I think for me, first and foremost, family, um,
Mhm.
you know, wife and kids. I've always prided myself on being a family man, and I thought my parents raised me pretty well, and that's something that I want to step into their shoes one day, and
Mhm.
kind of have that opportunity. Um, in terms of my career, I do hope I'm wherever I'm at. I'm not going to say that whether I'm an endodontist or not. I hope I'm still driven, and someone who still has patient-centered care and doesn't lose sight of that, and
Mhm.
um, really takes pride in what they do, and being able to help people. And not everyone can say that they have that opportunity. um, we put a lot of time and effort into getting our education, so I think that's something that we definitely have to use wisely. And then I hope
Mhm.
still ergonomically okay, able to stay active. Um, and yeah, other than that, just want to be happy. That's it.
Good for you. You'll do well. Yeah, do your stretches, do your back exercises, your yoga. You'll be good to go. And
Yep,
on that note, in all seriousness, I think it's for most dentists, as soon as they can get down to like 3 to 4 days a week, that's like the sweet spot where
yep.
you can you can enjoy dentistry, crank it out, but have at least one or two colleagues you can share the load with, or just have an office where you're able to close it after a bit. But yeah, make sure you have some downtime too. You take good care of your body, uh, have vacations, spend time with your family, and you'll actually extend your career. I know a dentist that worked well into his 70s and even 80s,
Wow.
and where they were fine, but they were able to get their schedule down to 3 days a week for decades, and they could crank out some dentistry when they wanted to, and then they would play the rest of the week, and so they would stay able to stay fresh. So yeah,
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that. Build a life that you don't need to retire from. So
that's
awesome.
the goal.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, hey, this has been such a pleasure, Michael. And to wrap things up, any last final words of wisdom or anything you want to share with the podcast listeners?
No, I just think you know, never lose sight of why we're here, and why we're in this field. And um, I do thank every person I run into in this field, and I'm able to make a connection with. And I think dentistry is a pretty cool fraternity. Something where um, it seems like everyone is always willing to help the um, you know rising applicants or the young
Mhm.
dentists. And I think that's something that I will take pride in as I you know go further into my career. So
Mhm.
I just want to say thank you, and thank you to you, Dr. Hatch, for inviting me on here. I've had a great time.
My pleasure, Michael, and it was all my pleasure, and I totally agree. Dentistry really is it's a beautiful profession. It is a great brotherhood, sisterhood of amazing clinicians. That are there some goofballs out there? Yeah, but they're very far and few in between. Most dentists that I've had the privilege of knowing, I'd say 99% of the ones that I know are just good people. They want to do what's right. They're willing to help those around them, and willing to share in their knowledge, and help the younger generation, which we need. We need our younger generation of dentists to continue the profession and keep it strong. So thank you, Michael. Well said.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. That wraps up another edition of our Lifestyle Dentist podcast. Thank you so much, Michael, for being on, and thank you for everyone being a part of it. Have a great day.